Hey there, how's it going? It's the Slayer here, and the DLC begins with a bang as we front up face this hunter whom we'd find a lot across the map, and later I start parrying these guys, which I haven't done here. And today is a pretty interesting video wherein, and yeah, these hunters aren't as smart as you always think they are, as sometimes we'd see later in the map, like this guy. He pretty much just jumped off backwards. But yeah, so in today's video, we are going to start off with the Lady Maria fight at the 1 minute 19 seconds mark. That's literally the highlight of the video and the best fight I found in this game so far. And as promised, I was going to do a few DLC bosses and the optional and one or two end game bosses, leaving the final boss of the game untouched so that I'm not locked out of the DLC. But it turned out that I went pretty far in the DLC, as it's, I guess, like got a bit of exploration and it's pretty good, but it's a slightly smaller map and more of a boss rush compared to the original game, and it's got better quality bosses too, so, and some cool drop-offs. Like, check this out, this Whirring Saw. Check this out, man. Oh wow, that was pretty amazing. Yeah, so it's got some cool weapons you get front up, and it's got good exploration in areas like Research Hall, and one of the front up areas has beautiful architecture, but it's more of a boss rush compared to the game. And here we are. So I did a couple of these DLC bosses. I'm starting out of order with them because I also went to some cool chalices in the main game and finished off, a couple of other things and stuff. But wow, Lady Maria, she was pretty fast. I got her on my third attempt, which is shown here. My first attempt, I got hit straight away, and the second attempt I came close, but not. But oh wow, I really gave it to her. That was amazing. So I'm using the Blades of Mercy, which reminds me of the Fox from Elden Ring more than the Twin Blades from DS3, and it really leverages the rally option of this game. So, I know people love parrying this lady, but I'm like, instead of doing that, let me just use the rally mechanic if needed, if I get hit, or otherwise just use the Blades of Mercy for rapid successive hits, because this lady, kind of like, Friday or maybe even that one in Elden Ring Millennia. I don't know why I stuttered for a second. Can hit pretty hard and interrupt your attacks, but you can interrupt her too. Wow! Check that out. I really cornered her and gave it to her and stuff, whatnot. But I personally found this lady a bit tougher than Millennia and Friday, because Friday, as I've shown before, I've beaten her at New Game Plus 7, even with the easy tactics to do it, even without summons or cheeses, although her third phase is pretty impressive. But Maria, the entire fight is kind of like Friday's third phase with a bit more damage. And in terms of Millennia, there are quite a few trick weapons you can use with her, and you can stun her pretty easily, at least until New Game Plus 3. Millennia genuinely gets stuff at New Game Plus 4, but this was Lady Maria in the base new game, and it was a pretty good challenge, although I finished it on my third encounter. And I can't wait to see what she'd be like in the NG Plus cycle. She'd be much harder. So in the base game, you could argue, oh wow, check this out. This was a pretty cool move, and I hadn't seen her moves before, and I hadn't really looked up this fight, so I went into it blind, kind of teaching myself with my own experience. So there were a couple of cases where I felt that I hope I've dodged that right. And yeah, and I did have to, rely a bit on, like, literally eating blood vials, like chewing on blood vials like lollies, but that's okay. This is a tough boss fight, and yep, it's the first time I'm playing on a PS, a dated PS4 with a controller, and I'm normally a keyboard player. And the fact that I still did this the way I did is pretty amazing. And this was an incredible fight. I didn't have to rely on any tricks. I didn't have to, fight against those dodgy beasts with poor visuals and shitty hitboxes, as I covered in the prior video. And it wasn't like a typical hunter fight where she just keeps on firing her weapon or turns into a beast. This is like probably like not only the one of the toughest, but the most fairest and enjoyable fights in this game, and something in which you can either play it the way you play Bloodborne with the your parries and your rallying and whatnot, or you can play it the way I did, which is pretty much the way I play Dark Souls and Elden Ring, wherein I just took a brutal dex weapon and just wailed out on her and dodged where I could. And it was pretty interesting, and this really lit up the thing, because barring this boss and a couple of others, wait, we were about to get her, it was close. She nearly got me, because I still don't know all her moves. I didn't know how to dodge that charge, but yeah, got her. Not bad. I was pretty pumped. I was like, yeah, got her totally. That was like pretty pumped on that. Yeah, so prey slaughtered. Yep, sure. So that was there, and I was going to save this fight for later, but right after I beat Living Failures, you straight away enter her fights. It's the first time. Like we used to make fun of Dark Souls 3 for having bonfires next to each other, but in Bloodborne in the DLC, there are these two bosses which are right next to each other. That was pretty funny. So I thought that after you beat Living Failures, once you explored the research hall, you'd probably need to explore some area to get up to the astral clock tower where you face this lady, but you straight away enter that. So I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Right down to business. So that was a pretty cool fight. I kind of enjoyed that, and I wish I hadn't finished her so early. Should have tried more weapons and builds against her and whatnot, because it was quite a pain unlocking that fight. So I don't know what a new game plus or a new run would be. Probably takes a lot of time. But yeah, here we are back in the research hall. This was a pretty interesting maze-like area, and in this is a cool NPC. You meet this lady downstairs in this part of the lab, and she gives you like some kind of an adrenaline blood vial, which not only heals you but temporarily keeps on reinvigorating your health. So it if you've got like a boss where you need a phase where you just want to keep on wailing at them and tank hits, that's a pretty cool thing to do. So I took that, and the research hall is pretty interesting. You go up different layers, you go through different rooms, you see different madmen or others, and you come across a lot of those hunters. They were a fun non-boss enemy because, yeah, so they really added some depth and challenge to the non-boss enemy, but after a while they become pretty easy to take out as well. So you've got a lot of these, and then you climb up to the top of this area, and then you got to drop something down, which basically, unlocks that living failure boss fight for you. And so that's a pretty interesting mechanism. I'd certainly recommend exploring this area and whatnot. So here I actually yeah, explored this a bit, and then I've just briefly shown you the path I took to the living failures boss fight. I've done that thing where you go on top and drop use a mechanism to lower a platform. Once you have done that, the path I've shown you is like the easiest path to the living failures boss fight from the lamp, because there's only one lamp in this area, the one you start with. So sometimes you get a bit edgy. I've got a lot of souls and you can't find a shortcut back to the lamp or something. But yeah, but this was pretty cool exploration and stuff. And yep. And that creature over there is the one which can give you some brain fluid, which you can feed to the lady downstairs who gives you that vial, so that she gives you that vial of that adrenaline thing I spoke about. And yep, here we are. We're about to enter the living failures boss fight. This was pretty interesting. Initially I thought it was just like an ordinary boss fight. Did it really belong in the game? It felt like something out of a kid's novel or something, and initially I felt as if these guys were just too cheap and tanking damage. But there was actually a bit more to it once you dodged their various projectiles or the other hazards they create. And there are different ways of doing this that I beat them the way I've kind of figured on the go, though that's not the only way. There are others, and there are a lot of other tricks people do to make sure once you get one, to get the others to spawn in their area. And this is one move they do where they create this dark astral environment and you get bombed by that jazz. So normally I avoid it by circling them or going to the corner, and apparently there is a way you can stop this move too, though I didn't know that. So but yeah, initially I thought this is just a dumb fight, but I actually repeated this more than the other fights, which is quite funny because you get Lady Maria in 3 attempts. I first timed Ludwig, whom you start with in a DLC, and I also first timed that Martyr Logarius in the Cainhurst Castle. But I took quite a few attempts at living failures, funnily. But yeah, and then here, that was where we had unlocked the Lady Maria fight. And here's another hunter, probably not the smartest one that we've seen in the game. This was funny. I'd shown a clip of this at the start of the video as well. This guy just falls back. Yeah, that was hilarious. Yeah, so that was pretty hilarious. Yeah, the dude just literally fell back and stuff. But yeah, and this is the research hall, which was pretty good, and it's got some cool stairwells and angles up them and stuff. So yeah, that's there, and it's been pretty good so far, honestly. Like I didn't quite enjoy the visuals and hitboxes of the beast fights. So, and I felt that either on my older PS4 or probably because I'm still getting used to the controller and in general, like, so this is part of the Ludwig the Cursed fight. This is the first fight in the DLC. I've only shown a part of it. I didn't show you the descent, though I should make a separate video of how you get to this fight. And yeah, because in person the fight wasn't as decent looking in this video. The visuals were very poor. It was hard to make out the hitboxes, and it wasn't as good as people show online. Maybe they've got a newer, I don't know, maybe there's something wrong in doing the console, or maybe they've got a PS4 Pro or PS5 which is much better than the one I've got. And here, this is a beautiful architecture. Like there is a wonderful lift with a platform that in an area below that one, which brings you up from an area where you fight 2 NPCs after you descend from meeting Ludwig, and from there you enter the research hall. So it looks pretty beautiful. But yeah, what my point was that the beast fights didn't look good on this old refurbished PS4 I'd got, and they seemed to stutter and slow down a bit, and the visuals were really poor. And oh wow, here's a madman and whatnot, and I couldn't really, like, the tactics that everyone uses to beat the beasts, you could implement them, but with quite some effort. So that's why I didn't show much of that Ludwig fight, because it wasn't really looking nice. And here we are back to the main game. This is the second last boss, Mergo's wet nurse. It can be tricky, and you can really get in her way and get hit almost like by unhittable attacks, but then there is a way, like as I've shown here, to stick to her right or stick behind her to avoid those whip-like hands, and once you do that, it's all good. So yeah, this was Mergo's wet nurse. And then yep, now we are back to some of the Chalice dungeons. This was a pretty cool fight in one of the earlier Chalice dungeons that I had taken out, and this guy is some Pthumerian Descendant. He reminds me of like some sort of early ancestor of the Black Knife Assassin that we see in Elden Ring. So it's pretty cool that that in the Chalice dungeons you do find some really cool bosses in Bloodborne that feel a bit better than the bosses in the main storyline. Because in the main storyline, barring Lady Maria, and I'll see how German is when I get to him, German and Orphan, of course, those are the ones I've left. All of the other bosses were nothing great compared to what I've seen in the Souls series, that even Ebrietas. And as I've already told you my view on how lousy I find the beast fights in this game, but yeah, other than that, yeah, it's still amazing in terms of like exploration and non-boss enemies. It trumps other Souls games, even DS3 and Elden. And I had a beautiful time this morning exploring Cainhurst Castle. It was out of the world, kind of like a better version of Stormvale or something. I'll create a separate video of how I explored it. So that's pretty good. So in terms of non-boss enemies and exploration, this game is pretty good, and it has some really cool weapons and moves which were later replicated in Elden Ring. And hey, this is another dungeon boss, not too tough to take, but not bad. A pretty nice design, that's what I like. So that's there. But yeah, in terms of the bosses, it could certainly improve, which is why the DLC came out, because without the DLC and without the Chalice bosses, you could say that this game had great potential but was a disappointment. So luckily we had that boss rush of really good bosses in the DLC, and some of these Chalice bosses are good. So on the whole, I think this has been a pretty fun experience. I've just got to the final boss and in both the DLC and the main game to go, and so almost concluded, and it's been a pretty good experience so far. And it's the first time I'm playing with a PS and with a PS4 and a controller, so it took me a bit of a time to adapt at the start, but once I did, it was pretty good. And here we are facing off Martyr Logarius. This is supposed to be a pretty tough boss, but I kind of first timed him. To be fair, that once I reached close to the final bosses, I kind of slightly over leveled up a bit, because just to get an idea of where everything else is, so then I could then tackle it on a New Game Plus run or on a new account without doing that. So that may have been a part of it, but yeah, still quite pumped that I first time this guy. And I haven't quite shown you Cainhurst Castle and how you get to him in this video, because we already had a lot. And that's my new drip, by the way. What do you think about it? Looking pretty sharp, eh? But yeah, in my next video, I'll do like an exploration of Gainer's Castle, show you how good it is, maybe also show you the path you take to need to get to the Ludwig fight. And if possible, you might even see Orphan, of course. That's the stuff. And German, yeah. So that's it from my side. I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, Lady Maria was really fun. And looking forward to the exciting concluding episode where we probably face off to the 2 or 3 things left and also do some exploration to give you a flavor of the game. Great, that's it from my side. Signing off. Hope you enjoyed.